Think about those times when you hear something completely unexpected, something that just doesn't fit with how you see the world, and your first thought is just, no way.
Right. Disbelief.
Exactly. But sometimes those claims, they can spark something huge. Today, we're doing a deep dive into, well, a really pivotal event and how people reacted right at the start.
We're aiming to pull out the core insights from these initial accounts, looking at the immediate responses to this, let's say, extraordinary claim.
And we've got some interesting sources you shared, a mix of things.
Yeah, quite a mix. We have bits from a gospel giving us up the story, then some psalm verses, which sound very different, more like praise, triumph even.
Okay.
Then a reading from the book of Acts, looking at what happened next, how the early believers acted, and finally a reflection piece tying it all together.
So multiple angles on the immediate aftermath of a reported resurrection, and we're focusing on why it was so hard to believe at first, and then what changed.
Precisely. That shift from skepticism to conviction is really central here.
Okay, let's get into it. The first eyewitness account in Mark's Gospel. Jesus appears first to Mary Magdalene.
Right, having risen early.
And she goes to tell the others. Makes sense. But they're grieving, weeping, and their reaction isn't what you might expect, is it?
No, not immediate joy, that's for sure. Mark puts it very plainly. When they heard that he was alive and had been seen by her, they would not believe it.
Just wouldn't believe it, full stop.
Yeah. It highlights that human element, doesn't it? When something shatters your whole frame of reference, your brain kind of resists it. It's almost a defense mechanism against something too radical.
And it wasn't just her account, right? The disbelief continues.
It does. The gospel then says Jesus appeared in a different form to two others walking out in the country.
Okay.
They also go back, report it to the rest.
Let me guess.
Same response.
They had
Disbelief again.
Wow. So multiple reports, same outcome. It really underscores how, I guess, unbelievable this news seemed.
It really does. It makes you think, what does it actually take to accept something so fundamentally new? It wasn't just hearing it clearly. Something else had to shift.
Which brings us to the next bit. He appears to the 11 disciples themselves while they're eating, actually.
And this isn't a gentle, hey guys, I'm back kind of appearance, apparently.
No, it says he upbraided them for their unbelief and hardness of heart because they hadn't believed the earlier witnesses.
That's a strong word, upbraided, a direct rebuke.
Yeah. It sounds like he was genuinely frustrated with them.
It seems so, and it really emphasizes this point. Believing sometimes means actively pushing past your own assumptions, maybe even your own grief or preconceptions. That hardness of heart implies a kind of resistance, a refusal to let go of what they thought was possible.
But right after this rebuke, there is a major shift, isn't there? He gives them their mission.
Immediately after, go into all the world and preach the gospel to the whole creation.
So from being called out for not believing, they're instantly commissioned to go tell everyone. That's quite a turnaround.
It's a massive pivot. The focus shifts entirely from their internal struggle with belief to an external universal purpose. These very guys who doubted are now the messengers.
Okay, now let's bring in that other voice, the Psalm. Psalm 118, it starts with thanksgiving.
Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His steadfast love endures forever. A very different feel.
Totally different. And then it has lines like, the Lord is my strength and my song. He's become my salvation. And crucially, I shall not die, but I shall live and recount the deeds of the Lord.
Yes, it's this powerful declaration of life, of victory, almost defiance against death itself. Within that religious tradition, it's a song of ultimate triumph.
So if you place that alongside the resurrection story,
it provides this lens of meaning, doesn't it? It frames the resurrection not just as surviving death, but conquering it. And that line, I shall live and recount the deeds, echoes that mission Jesus gave the disciples telling the story.
Okay, so we have the initial doubt, the rebuke, the mission, and this voice of theological triumph. Now, Acts, Peter and John, what happens with them?
Well, Acts describes them speaking boldly, and the authorities, the religious leaders, are kind of taken aback.
Why? What did they notice?
They saw their boldness, but they also recognized they were, quote, uneducated, common men. It didn't compute.
Huh. So they weren't scholars or elites, but they spoke with incredible confidence.
Exactly. And the text says the authorities wondered, and they recognized that they had been with Jesus. They connected their transformation directly to him.
And there was also a specific event, wasn't there? A healing.
Yes, a man unable to walk had been healed. Acts calls it a notable sign. something public, undeniable, that made it very hard for the authorities to just dismiss Peter and John. It was concrete evidence backing up their words.
But the authorities still tried to stop them.
Oh, absolutely. They saw this gaining traction, presumably. So they explicitly charged them not to speak or teach at all in the name of Jesus.
A gag order, basically.
Pretty much. Trying to stamp it out before it spread further? It shows how disruptive the message was perceived to be, challenging the status quo.
But Peter and John's response, quite something.
It really is. They essentially say, look, should we obey you or should we obey God? You figure that out. We have to talk about what we've seen and heard.
Wow. No hesitation, just pure conviction.
Total conviction. They've gone from being doubters themselves, as we saw in the gospel, to being absolutely unshakable witnesses. It suggests that journey through doubt actually solidified their faith immensely.
And the authorities couldn't really touch them at that point.
Not easily, because, as Acts notes, the people were praising God for the healing. Public opinion was strongly influenced by the miracle they'd witnessed, so the leaders were kind of stuck.
Which shows the message was spreading, despite the initial hurdles.
Definitely. The combination of the bold testimony and the tangible evidence of the healing was powerful. It suggests that lived experience and unwavering witness can overcome a lot of opposition.
Okay, let's look at the final piece, the reflection. It pulls in another psalm verse, Psalm 96. Declare his glory among the nations, his marvelous deeds among all peoples.
Yes.
And it makes a really interesting connection back to the beginning.
How so?
It points out that the risen Jesus appeared first to those who were grieving, specifically Mary. And that encounter transformed their sorrow into a mission.
Connecting the grief we heard about in Mark directly to the purpose, the call to action.
Exactly. It highlights this idea that the starting point wasn't strength, but sorrow and maybe even weakness. And from that place, this mission of hope emerged. It's a powerful thought that vulnerability can be the very place where purpose is found. The reflection then pushes us to boldly live as witnesses of the resurrection today. So it's not just history.
Right. It frames it as an ongoing reality, something that should shape how we live now.
And it includes a prayer, asking for courage.
Courage to share truth with love, especially when it's hard for people to believe, maybe even hard for us to articulate. And asking that our lives actually reflect the joy and hope of it all.
It kind of sums up that whole journey we've tracked: doubt, encounter, transformation, mission, the challenge of sharing it.
Beautifully put, yes. It acknowledges the difficulty, but focuses on the call to share with love and integrity.
And then it leaves us, the listener, with a direct challenge. It asks you, who in your life needs to hear a word of hope or encouragement today, and how can you be the one to share it?
Makes it very personal, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Takes it right out of the ancient texts and puts it into our everyday lives and relationships. How do these themes play out for us?
So, wrapping up this deep dive, we've gone from profound doubt, even among the closest followers,
through these intense, transformative encounters,
to a growing conviction and this powerful mission to share the news, facing down opposition along the way.
It really is remarkable that the story itself includes that initial struggle, that very human skepticism.
It makes it more real somehow, not instantaneous, perfect belief.
Definitely. It's a testament to the idea that extraordinary claims often meet resistance, but also that personal experience can be incredibly powerful, leading to this unshakable commitment.
It really does make you think, doesn't it? Beyond this specific story, how often do we encounter things that challenge our beliefs? How important is hearing from witnesses, from people who've experienced something firsthand?
And how do we respond when we feel compelled to share something we deeply believe in, especially if we know others might find it hard to accept?
Yeah. Have you ever been in that position, struggling to accept something or trying to share something important against skepticism? Lots to reflect on there, about doubt, witness, and the sheer power of a message that resonates.